And a good Saturday morning to you. Welcome once again to Health Matters with Dr. Jim Warner of Warner Chiropractic in Rockford, Illinois. A longtime practitioner and still looks young, and he taught me how to say this word a few years ago, ileocecal, right?
Yes, sir. Ileocecal as an ileocecal valve. And the name of that valve, Fred, and this is a valve that's in the intestinal tract. So it's basically a valve between the ileum, which is part of the small intestine, and the cecum, which is part of the large intestine. So it's the valve that separates the large and the small intestine.
And it gets stuck sometimes.
It gets stuck. Sometimes it gets stuck in an open position, and sometimes it gets stuck in a closed position. And so there are treatments available to help that. Now, a lot of people, and I would say probably 99% of the people, don't even know if they have a problem with this valve. They may think, they're having digestive problems, they might have constipation, or they might have diarrhea. There's a lot of different symptoms, Fred. Actually, shoulder pain, pain around the heart, dizziness, flu symptoms, bursitis-type pain, ringing of the ears, nausea, sinus infections, headaches, circles underneath the eyes. Those are common things that people have, not even realizing that it's really a digestive problem.
Now, why is this valve such a problem for people?
Well, good question. The purpose of the valve is to have a correct timing. In other words, when you eat something and the food goes from your stomach into your small intestine, the small intestine we could call the kitchen area. Let's call that the kitchen area. That's where the foods are broken down and absorbed, and the good, healthful things take place in the kitchen area. And then afterwards, it passes through to what we could call the garbage area that you go to the bathroom in. Now, this valve is very, very important because it'll open and close to allow the food or the food that's already been used up, or the waste material actually, to allow the waste material to go from the kitchen area into the garbage area. And so it'll open and shut to allow that. And that is good. If it gets stuck in the open position or it gets stuck in the shut position, then that's not good.
Now, if it's stuck in the shut position, that means the food can't move out of that small intestine into the large intestine.
Right. And so that person is normally constipated because the food's not going through. If it stays longer in that kitchen area or that small intestine, the body pulls all the water out of the material because it's absorbed that way. And if it does so, it'll also absorb toxins then, because the toxins come in, they're absorbed in that area also. And that's why you can get a number of different symptoms, headaches and such, and that's because it's actually toxic material that's in your system.
It was supposed to have moved out into the garbage area, but it didn't, and then your body started absorbing it.
Then your body absorbs it, and then you wonder why you get sick. Now, the other side of it is the closed, and or the open valve. When the valve is open, then not only does the food leave and go into the garbage area, but then also it can backtrack and
because the valve is open.
Because the valve is open, and so the waste material can go back into the small intestine and then get reabsorbed, and you get the poisons again.
Wow. So either way, if it's stuck open or shut, you end up absorbing poisons into your system.
Yes, you do. And other than maybe having a loose stool, if it's stuck open, because sometimes the food will pass through too quickly, and so you might have a loose stool or you might have constipation. Other than those two things, the symptoms are pretty much the same.
All right. What are the causes of this valve being tricky like that?
Well, that's a good question also, Fred. Some of the causes, you would say, well, gee, why should that be? Because I'm eating healthy. And what I really find a lot of this with is when people maybe make a change in their diet and they start eating some roughage foods, let's say, and maybe they haven't done that for a long time. It's not part of their normal diet. And then they overload. You know, they might eat a lot of popcorn or seeds, strawberries. I noticed that with strawberries. When people haven't eaten strawberries and then eat a lot of strawberries, we find a lot of ileocecal valve problems, and that's because it irritates that valve. And then when that valve is irritated, it gets swollen. If you could see it, it would be red and swollen, and so then it gets stuck in the open position or the shut position. So even though raw fruits and vegetables are very good, and we've always recommended those here, if you just dump them into your system quickly and you're not used to it, it can cause an ileocecal valve problem, and part of the treatment for that would be to eliminate roughage food for probably a week or two until things normalize, and then gradually introduce the roughage.
Are there any types of physical things that would cause this problem?
Yes, there are. Somebody could lean over something, like leaning over a chair, and it pushes up against the right side of your abdomen. If that were the case, sometimes you can get an ileocecal valve problem just from that. I notice that when people maybe reach over a couch or so to pick something that fell off in the back, I have people come in frequently that said, man, all I did was reached over this couch or this chair, and then my stomach started bothering me, or I started feeling it there on the right side. Almost sometimes it even feels like it's an appendicitis.
Because it's on the same side of the body.
Because it's on the same side, yeah. And so any type of motion that would push against that, changes in the diet. Sometimes people, when they're really under stress, whether it's emotional stress or some type of stress that affects their body will sometimes be affected in that area, and it can cause problems with going to the bathroom, with elimination because of that ileocecal valve.
Now, you mentioned changing the diet can cause the problem, and you might back off the roughage for a week or so.
Yes.
But what can a chiropractor do to help with a problem with a ileocecal valve?
Another good question. Well, one of the things that we do in our office is that we do a chiropractic adjustment in the abdomen to either open it or to close the valve. In other words, we do a special type of testing to see, is it an open valve or a closed valve? And then we will either open or close it manually, which is only takes a few seconds to do, but it's something that needs to be done. And then we will also treat a couple different acupuncture points in the body, and then also what we call neurolymphatic points. Now, what this does, by treating the acupuncture points, it will normalize the nervous energy that goes to the valve. And so we can stimulate certain points in the legs. Actually, there's points in the calves that affect this ileocecal valve. And that'll bring the normal nerve energy to that valve. And then the lymphatic point, you rub that. That's in the shoulder, and it's also behind the right ear. You rub that point, and what that does, that drains the swelling that's around that joint. So it increases the flow of the lymphatic system around the ileocecal valve, and then therefore that swelling goes down. And so by doing the chiropractic treatment to the valve, treat the acupuncture points that help the valve, increase the drainage around that valve, and eliminate roughage for a short period of time, and certain spicy things like peppers and cinnamon, maybe alcoholic beverages, possibly caffeine products. These things can also irritate that valve. So you want to eliminate the irritants too.
What about other dietary things? If a person isn't experiencing any problem at the time, but they don't want to, perhaps from time to time they have a chronic problem with this, are there any special types of foods to stay away from?
Well, raw fruits and vegetables. I mean, and those are, again, good for you, but those are things that you'd have to eat them cooked maybe until this thing clears up. And so sometimes the very thing you think is good, sometimes people think, I need more roughage, and they're having problems, and then they dump more in, and it's actually causing more problems. So until you get this thing taken care of, you want to have non-roughage food and then gradually introduce it after the symptoms are gone and the valve is working correctly.
Now, there are other types of things that can cause digestive problems as well. So how do you determine if it is indeed an ileocecal valve problem?
Excellent. Well, there's a procedure that I do in the office, and I do a muscle test. I test a muscle to see if it's strong, and if the muscle is strong, then I push with my hand in the abdomen towards closing the valve, and then I'll test the muscle, and then I'll also push in the opposite direction towards opening the valve. And then if the arm gets weak in one of those motions, That'll tell you if it's either open or shut.
And I'm sure that you've seen some dramatic healings by getting that problem fixed.
Absolutely. There's usually, within 5 minutes, you let the person off the table, they go, I can't believe the difference. It feels good. And then they'll start having normal bowel movements, and their headaches can go away, their sinus problems. A lot of times the sinus problems and headaches are due to the toxins that are absorbed in your intestinal tract. And by making sure this valve works correctly, that'll make sure that you don't absorb toxins.
And, of course, regularity is very important so that you're not absorbing those toxins.
Yes, and many times people, and probably most of the time, Fred, when they're having bowel movements, the material that comes out is usually 2 and 3 days old. And that's the bad part. It should be that when you have a bowel movement, you're getting rid of what you ate the previous day. And it should go through that quickly. And if it's not, then there's a good possibility that there's maybe a closed ileocecal valve. And that's causing all sorts of digestive upset and problems with elimination, constipation, what have you.
And we usually mention water on this program, and I imagine that's an important part of this whole thing.
Water it's very important. A lot of times there'll be a sudden thirst. People will just be thirsty, and that's also a sign that you need more water in your system and that you have an ileocecal valve problem. The water also keeps the food soft as it goes through your system. If you're not drinking enough water, that will cause the body to pull water out of your food, and then you'll have very difficult bowel movements also, and it's also irritating to the valve.
Well, I know you have literature on this because you brought some of it into the studio, and I know also there is a website.
Yes, our website is www.warnerchiro.com. They can contact our website for information, or they could call our office and request the literature on the ileocecal valve.
All right, and if they want to call the office, how do they do that?
It's area code 815-398-8111.
That's 398-8111. Dr. Jim Warner from Warner Chiropractic in Rockford, located at 4855 East State Street in the Manhattan Plaza in Rockford. Dr. Warner, thank you for the information.
Thank you. It's been a great day.
And that'll do it for Health Matters.